You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Incoming transmission.
If nobody can rescind a
You're
DACA order...
to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
If the president can't rescind an executive order, who the can? That's coming up here on the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the new conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Today, we are taking a look at DACA. That's right, our favorite remnant of 8 years of President Barack Insane Obama is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals executive order. Don't confuse it with an act, because it's not an act of Congress. It is an executive order. And it is an executive order that on Friday, a judge ruled cannot be rescinded by the president. I'll say that again because it bears repeating. A D.C. judge, that's in Washington, D.C., for those not up on your geography. So a Washington, D.C. District Court judge by the name of, where is his bloody name? Judge John Bates for the District of Columbia said the Trump administration did not justify its decision to eliminate the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program known as DACA. Bates said the Department of Homeland Security, which runs the program, failed to, quote, elaborate meaningfully on the agency's primary rationale for its decision and called the policy unlawful and unconstitutional. Funny, that's the exact damn reason that the Department of Homeland Security is seeking to rescind it, because it was unlawful and unconstitutional to begin with. And constitutionally speaking, that is the core function of the executive branch. That is the reason the President of the United States has veto power. I know that might be a jump for some people, but that's actually why the President has the capacity to veto acts of Congress, for example. The veto is not supposed to be used as a policy tool. That actually didn't really start until, 4 or 5 presidents in, and was quite a shock to the system. The veto power should only be utilized when the president feels that a law is unconstitutional, not whether or not he or she agrees with said law. That, my friends, was the beginning of the imperial presidency, when you went from, okay, that law doesn't match our Constitution and the existing laws that we have, to, nah, I don't like it, I'm gonna kill it. Well, folks, the district court judge, mind you, district court only, not a circuit court, not an appellate court, not the Supreme Court by any dang stretch of the imagination, has ruled that the Department of Homeland Security cannot rescind DACA at this time. So let's actually go to the ruling, and let's see how slanted this is. Number one, if you're not familiar with this case, this is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, plaintiffs versus Donald J. Trump et al., and the trustees of Princeton versus the United States of America. Okay, that's where these cases are sitting. If you want to pull this up, it's on cdn.cnn.com is the full text of the ruling. I like this part, okay? For the reasons explained below, the government's motion will be denied. Although the Nielsen memo purports to further explanation for DHS's decision to rescind DACA, it fails to elaborate meaningfully on the agency's primary rationale for its decision, the judgment that the policy was unlawful and unconstitutional, which they don't really need to elaborate why it's unconstitutional, because the president lacks the ability to confer citizenship on somebody or a different citizenship status. That power remains with the Congress. But I digress. Returning to the quote, and while the memo offers several additional, quote, policy grounds for DACA's rescission, most of these simply repackage legal arguments previously made, and hence are, quote, insufficiently independent from the agent's evaluation of DACA's legality to preclude judicial review or to support the agency's decision. Finally, the memo does offer what appears to be one bona fide, albeit logically dubious, policy reason for DACA's rescission, but this reason was articulated nowhere in DHS's prior explanation for its decision, and therefore cannot support that decision now. So, in other words, Judge Bates is saying that DHS cannot rescind an executive order on the order of the President of the United States because they haven't given him a good enough reason. Okay? The concept of the executive order, number one, it's bloody fiat ruling and is completely unconstitutional to begin with. But number two, it precludes a judge at this level from intervening in it. This is a clear overextension of the judicial branch's power and is a clear case of legislating from the bench. Right now, what we are seeing are the two ruling classes of the American government duking it out. And where the real power in the American government lies today in 2018 is not with the House, it's not with the Senate, it is with the judicial and the executive. And right now they are duking it out because the judicial branch, many of them packed in during the Clinton and Obama years, are out and out rebelling on policy grounds against the Trump administration. Now, whether you like the Trump administration or not, it is facile. It is on its face an unconstitutional practice for the President of the United States to, by fiat, confer legal status on illegal immigrants in the United States. This is a power that is enumerated to the Congress. Therefore, it is on its face unconstitutional and bears no additional explanation to a judge who, albeit logically dubious, I'll steal his own words, understanding of the Constitution must exist. I mean, a D.C. District Court judge should have a working understanding of the Constitution of the United States of America. Doesn't that connect? Doesn't that work in your mind? But no. So, apparently we have to walk him through that 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 + 2 = 4. And this is going to be delayed further and ratcheted up to another level in the appeals process. And folks, here is where the magic happens. What you are seeing is a delaying tactic. That is all this amounts to. This entire judgment here, this entire case through the NAACP. By the way, The Hill had some good reporting on this as well. This is all an exercise in delaying strategy. Oh, I stand corrected. Bates was a George W. Bush appointee. Look at that. Earlier this year, Bates, a George W. Bush appointee, became the third federal judge to reject Trump's explanation for ending the program, ruling at a time that the decision by the Justice Department that the program was unlawful was virtually unexplained. Folks, here is the hope of the left, and the hope of everyone who is fighting to preserve DACA. They're hoping that in 2018, the mythical blue wave will strike, and that they will be able to achieve some sort of a working majority or functioning representation in Congress, enabling them to pass a true DREAM Act, which will render the DACA executive order moot. Or that they can hold out until 2020 and hope that a Democrat is elected President of the United States who will uphold the provisions of DACA, or that they will simply wear down the opposition. That they will essentially hit us with a denial of service attack. If anybody here is in IT or in the technological world, a dedicated denial of service attack is where you send so much information, so many packets of data at a system that it just breaks because it can't handle the flow of all that information at the same time. And this, I think, is part of the liberal agenda, part of the leftist agenda against the Trump administration, that absolutely every ruling, despite its clear constitutional basis, must be challenged, and challenged repeatedly, over and over and over again, to overwhelm the resources and overwhelm the attention span of the people who would defend them. Now, DACA hasn't been in the news for a good long time, and it's up to us to keep our attention peaked. It's up to us to stay tuned in and turned on to this topic. Now, I live in Arizona, so this is very near and dear to my heart. But DACA cannot be allowed to continue. It was an unconstitutional overreach of the executive branch, and now we're seeing an unconstitutional overreach of the judicial branch in an effort to uphold it, in a barely disguised effort to uphold it. A decision that is prima facie unconstitutional being upheld by a judge on the basis of the Constitution. That is the insane world that we find ourselves in today, the 5th of August, in the year of our Lord, 2018. It's go time, folks. As we draw closer and closer to the 2018 congressional elections, the midterm elections, this is the battlefield that we are fighting for. This is the ground that we cannot give. Because should the bulwarks fail, should the defenses of the Republican Party crumble and give way to progressive socialists like Alessandro Cortez, Ocasio-Cortez. There you go. Can't even remember the woman's name. If we should have the far left flank establish a foothold within our legislature on a national level, we will see the end of conservative principles in the United States. It is a bit of a joke of fate that we truly do live in the most important presidency in the history of the United States. Not because the president is the most important president in the history of the United States. No, not at all. Although I'm sure Trump would love to think he is. Our president of Kekistan, the Cheeto-in-Chief. I'm sure he would absolutely love to hear that his presidency is the most pivotal in history. No. It's coming to a head. It's coming to a head within the next couple of years. This will be where conservatism in the United States lives or dies. The next 6 years will tell us if the Constitution can endure, if the culture of the United States of America is sufficient to uphold the constitutional values of our founding fathers or not. Can what all those brave men and women fought for 200 and some odd years ago, Can it withstand the onward march of progressivism in our culture? Can it withstand a generation who does not see or willfully denies the evils of socialism? Can it withstand the dismissal of religion as a center of morals and reasoning? Can it withstand an assault on the very notion of national sovereignty itself? Lincoln said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." I've never seen this house so divided in my life. And I would wager even those of you alive in the 60s could even say that you have seen it more so. Take a quick break, and when we come back, a breaking story on CNN and also on local affiliates is that in New Mexico, law enforcement officials have raided a compound and rescued 11 children. All that and more here on the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Follow us on Facebook.com/HoloNet, theholonet.com, and theholonet.lanterns.buzz. Tweet at the HoloNet.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
I see people coming together not for divisiveness of party or for dichotomy of thought, but for unity in principle. In the principles that founded our nation, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, ladies and gentlemen, those principles are under the sternest attack that we have seen in many generations. It has become a crime in this nation nearly to express a difference in opinion from what is held by your party to be doctrine, from what is purported by the media to be truth. We have an opportunity to reach out to our fellow Americans regardless of their creed and regardless of their political inclinations, and unite as Americans, not as Republicans or as Democrats, as liberals or conservatives, but to unite around the principles that have guided this nation so well. I've covered a lot of stories, but the story that remains untold is the story of America in the 21st century, when we choose to turn back the tide against progressive socialism, when we choose to embrace the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, when we remember what it is to be Americans. And that principle will not die as long as there's one man, one woman, one child who looks defiantly into the night and says, "I am free."
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
All right, I'm back. Jeez. Back from that quick little break here on the HoloNet podcast, listening to Lanterns.Buzz, Lanterns Media Network. We are also on iTunes, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, BitChute, 5 or 6 other YouTube podcast outlets that I can't name readily. Player.fm is one of them. But the big ones I've highlighted right now, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and SoundCloud. You can find those on theholonet.com, www.theholonet.com. Now, I told you when you got at the other side of the break, we were going to go to New Mexico. Not that I really want to, because it's just as hot there, and I'm a wuss in the heat. But we go to CNN under duress. 11 emaciated children are rescued from a filthy and heavily armed compound. Brace yourself, kids, it doesn't get any better from here. CNN reports, the 11 children were so famished the sheriff said they looked like third world refugees, but they weren't found in an underdeveloped country. They were discovered in a remote New Mexico compound where an underground trailer kept them hidden from the outside world. The only food we saw were a few potatoes and a box of rice in the filthy trailer, Taos County Sheriff Jeffrey Hargrave said. But what was most surprising and heartbreaking was the team located a total of 5 adults and 11 children that looked like third world country refugees, not only with no food or fresh water, but with no shoes, personal hygiene, and basically dirty rags for clothing. It is not clear how long the 11 children and 5 adults were living in these squalid conditions. Authorities were tipped off to the scene in Amelia, near the Colorado border, after someone forwarded a message believed from a third party. The message said in part, "We are starving and need food and water." They executed a search warrant Friday and found 11 children ranging from 1 to 15, along with 3 gaunt women believed to be their mothers. The 3 women were taken into custody for questioning and released, and they arrested 2 heavily armed men, Lucas Morton and Siraj Wahaj, on the scene. An AR-15 rifle, loaded 30-round magazines, 4 loaded pistols, and many more rounds of ammo were found in a makeshift compound that includes a small travel trailer buried in the ground, covered by plastic with no water, plumbing, or electricity. Wahaj was wanted for the abduction of his 3-year-old son, Abdul Ghani Wahaj, in Georgia, authorities said. He was booked with no bond because of a warrant out on his missing son. It was not immediately clear whether Morton or Wahaj had attorneys. They have not yet made their first appearance in court. The sheriff said the toddler Wahaji was accused of kidnapping was not one of the 11 children found. CNN has reached out to the woman believing to be the missing child's mother, but has not received a response. So 11 children and 3 women, all highly emaciated, discovered in a compound in New Mexico near the Colorado border. So this bore a little bit more looking from me. I went to KOB4, which is a local affiliate here. David Lynch reports in Albuquerque, New Mexico, documents obtained by KOB indicate that law enforcement in northern New Mexico knew that several adults and children were living at a makeshift compound just a few miles south of the Colorado-New Mexico border. For exactly how long authorities knew about the compound's occupants is unknown, but gunfire could be heard from the property on a regular basis, according to search warrants executed this week. Hargrave's account of the site describes what appears to be a shooting range along one side. Now, this is where it gets a little weird, okay, from KOB.com. In mid-May, Hargrave was made aware that the missing child in Wahaj could be in New Mexico, the search warrant states. Further, the aerial surveillance of the compound comprised partially of a buried trailer, haphazardly created shacks, and walls of tires, shown that a child could be seen walking with a limp. The child's mothers told authorities in Clayton County, Georgia, that he had a limp and required medication for a condition that causes seizures. Now, Georgia investigators said Wahaj, quote, was to perform an exorcism on the child and deny him his prescribed medications. I told you it was getting weird. So, there are a couple of pieces here, and there's not enough information to go on, but there's room for some speculation, okay? Now, on the surface, and the most expected thing for any right-wing conservative to do would be to go, Wahaj, Abdul, these are Middle Eastern-sounding names. Compound located in New Mexico on the Colorado border. Guns and ammunition discovered. 11 children. 3 women for 2 men. Hang on. Cool yourself down for just a second, okay? Chill. We then hear that the father was to perform an exorcism on the children. So, on the child that's missing, on the toddler. So we start to see kind of things that lead in, like maybe the Islamic extremist direction, and then we see things that lead into kind of the Christian extremist direction. You know, are we dealing with religious fundamentalism here? Or are we just dealing with a couple of psychos? I'm leaning toward the latter right now. I don't want to get on record and push this out as, you know, a Islamic fundamentalist situation or Christian fundamentalist situation or religious fundamentalism at all. But it's starting to bear some of the hallmarks. Now, this is a developing story. So we're going to Lex18.com, Lexington, Kentucky's local news. It gives us a little bit more information, but not much. Okay? It tells us Amalia is located 145 miles northeast of Albuquerque and is in an isolated high desert area near the New Mexico-Colorado border. Now, it says, there were no injuries during the search. But the adults and children appeared as if they were refugees with no shoes, personal hygiene, in the saddest living conditions and poverty I have ever seen. So number one, first and foremost, your heart just breaks for the kids. 11 kids living in squalor. And this is kind of a southwestern thing. You know, we kind of have it happen. I mean, you look at Arizona and you have, you know, the Hilldale, Colorado kind of situation there. The Hilldale, Colorado City, Twin Cities, where you have all the FLDS, Warren Jeffs types up there. And you think like down to Texas, where you had the Yearning for Zion, the YFC, Warren Jeffs Ranch, and you also have, of course, Waco. And I'm sitting here just saying, thank God this didn't go sideways. Thank God this didn't go sour, and we didn't just wind up with another Waco or Ruby Ridge on our hands, because, man, like I said, all the hallmarks are there. The abject poverty, the large count of children, the large stockpile of weapons. This is definitely a story to keep paying attention to, and we're going to stay on it here at the HoloNet. I recommend that you do the same, just so we could try to find out precisely what happened near the New Mexico-Colorado border to those 11 children, who I'm sure at this hour are probably looking at New Mexico law enforcement as their saviors. But yeah, keep them in your thoughts, prayers, and consideration. We're going to take one more quick break here, and when we come back, we're gonna verge a little bit more into interesting news rather than just the, oh my god, horrific style of news and all that wonderful crap. And we're actually going to verge a little bit more away from just the political, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the philosophical and really what you think and where you think we're heading as a country. Because, according to reports, the family from Sister Wives is now moving to Flagstaff, Arizona. Yes, coming to a city near me very soon. Sister Wives will be coming here. And in the wake of the Hodges v. Oberfeld decision, the acceptance of gay marriage, now we have people talking about acceptance for pedophiles. We have to ask the question, are we at a point now where we're going to start seeing polygamy become acceptable in mainstream? Is that the direction we're headed? We'll follow up on that little trail coming up next here on the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around, shan't be long, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. The new Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now with you. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Couldn't say that any faster if I tried. And, ladies and gentlemen, the polygamists are coming! The polygamists are coming!
Light the beacons!
Alright, that's enough. Sorry about that. But hey, it was fun, but I'm probably going to do that again later. I love that clip! Anyway, we got to get to it now. According to the Arizona Republic, azcentral.com, the Arizona Repugnant, as we like to call it, Garrett Mitchell, reports the Sister Wives polygamist family will pack up their 4 homes and move to Flagstaff, Arizona this year, People magazine reported. Cody Brown and his 4 wives and their 18 children currently live in Las Vegas and are the stars of a popular TLC reality show. The family announced their plans this month. Just saying, just a little aside here. Doesn't there seem to maybe be like a what's the word I'm looking for? Circumstantial connection here to our previous story. 11 kids, 2 men, 3 women. And then a polygamist family. Never mind that, it's just stupidity.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Oh, God, shut up, jeez. Okay. So Cody, his 4 wives, their 18 children, currently live in Las Vegas, and they're the stars of the popular TLC reality show, and the family announced their plans this month. They say, as much as we've loved making our home and memories in Las Vegas, we're excited to embark on a new adventure in Flagstaff, Arizona, the Brown family said in a statement to People. We're looking forward to cooler temperatures, the mountain air, scenic views, and slower lifestyle of Flagstaff. Though much remains unknown about when and where they'll be living in Flagstaff, the tight-knit plural family is sure to document their move on their TV show. So, there's a nice picture of the whole family there. Cody is married to 3 other women, I believe. Oh, no, 4 women. Did I just say 4 women? Yeah, 4 wives. 18 kids, at least 1 grandkid. We had this talk a couple of shows ago, I feel like it was, where I busted out my favorite I Am Nostradamus clip for everybody accusing me of using too much clips. No, I'm not going to bust it out, but inspired by Razor Fist, who puts on a lot of rather good pieces of content on YouTube. But we really did tell you so, didn't we? We have reached the point where so many of the fears of conservatives, not just fiscal conservatives, but social conservatives, the ones that a lot of us guffawed, poo-pooed, and dismissed 8 years ago, a lot of those fears, a lot of those concerns, I should say, are becoming realized. The left derided us and called us, such horrible human beings. 8 years ago when we said, if we move forward with this gay marriage proposition, what's to stop polygamists from jumping on board? And what's to stop, the Warren Jeffs situation, FLDS thing, from becoming legal? And what's to stop pedophilia and all this, that, and the other thing? And now what's all over the news lately? Pedophiles here and there. I mean, you have a prominent director, James Gunn, being accused of pedophilia due to some tweets that he put out. It's coming mainstream. The slippery slope argument actually bore fruit, damn it, and it's such a logical fallacy. The slippery slope argument. It's a terrible argument. But here we are standing in the shadow of its consequences. How can we stand in the shadow of the consequences of these actions and not admit that there is potentially causal relationship here? Coincidence is not causation, but there's definitely correlation here. And how can we as a nation and as a culture so blithely ignore the obvious that we are in fact looking at the moral decay of the United States. And it does not take very long for a moral decay to turn into decay of a national level. Because our type of government is not designed for an amoral people. Our people must be of great moral fabric and great moral strength in order to maintain a representative republic. Thomas Jefferson, I believe it was, said that only a virtuous people can make our form of government work. Benjamin Franklin, when asked what type of government it was, he said, "It is a republic if you can keep it." But every day it seems we inch closer and closer to that moment outlined in Star Wars.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
All you need to do is look to the character assassination right now of Judge Kavanaugh. If you read the stories on the left, go ahead and take this sister wife stuff off screen. If you read the stories of the left right now, Judge Kavanaugh is practically the Antichrist. If you read just the Twitter sphere and the blogosphere from the left. You know, the other day, I actually had to get onto Google AdWords, Google AdSense for theholonet.com. If you haven't been on my website, yes, I use Google AdSense. It's not terrible, but, I throw some ads on there because I like getting 5 cents a year. Yeah, don't ever try to make a lot of money off that. But I had a big problem on here. Planned Parenthood ads kept populating on my webpage, on theholonet.com, despite the fact that I had clearly and definitively marked no abortion ads. No ads from abortion providers, no pro-choice lobbying, anything like that on my page. And what do I open up my page to the other day? Save Planned Parenthood right here in the banner. I had to get on there and I had to strip it out manually. And I sent a complaint to Google. Because you are the consumer, you look at my page and you assume that, anything that's advertised on here, I'm getting paid for, which by the way is like 2 cents a year. Did I mention that? I don't get paid anything for these ads. It sucks. But I had to go in here and manually rip out the Planned Parenthood ads. Repeatedly. And they're ads bashing the ever-loving out of Judge Kavanaugh. Painting him as some sort of an authoritarian fascist who is bound and determined to set back women's reproductive rights, which is an absolutely asinine term, because the man believes, as I do, that abortion is murder. And that Roe v. Wade is bad law. By the way, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has a pretty dim opinion of Roe v. Wade, if you care to look that up. She said it was horrible law. And that it probably set back the women's rights movement 25 years. I'm paraphrasing. But if good old RBG, with her doily-style robes, I don't even know what the hell you call that, like the lapels on it look like doilies, don't they? It's kind of weird. It's kind of like, I look at that and I go, doesn't that belong on an end table at my grandma's? But anyway. Even she said it was terrible law. So, the fact that another constitutional judge and a scholar of constitutional law, Brett Kavanaugh, spoke out against and wrote against the decision, this now makes him the proverbial antichrist for the left. Folks, I said it before. The battle is here, and the battle is now, and the battle is for the Congress in 2018. We must hold the Congress, because the progress that the Trump administration is making, whether you like President Trump or not, if you look at what he's doing more and what he's saying less, and this is not being a Trump apologist, this is not saying give him carte blanche to speak whatever asinine garbage pops out of his mouth and into his Twitter feed, because it's not. He tweets like a moron sometimes, and I can't stand it. But look at what the administration has accomplished since the Trump administration began. That work must go on. It must continue. The Trump administration must continue to push forward. The GOP in Congress must continue to push forward and must continue to withstand the unrelenting, endless assault being mounted on them in the judiciary, being mounted on them in the court of public opinion, and being mounted upon them in the very halls of Congress itself. If they cannot hold the line in 2018, we will see, at best, a lame duck presidency for the next 2 years, which I only hope we could reverse in 2020. Failing that, we could see the impeachment of the President of the United States on some drummed-up charge, forgive the pun, on trumped-up charges of Russian collusion and collaboration and some sort of fabricated indictment along the lines of the previous memos that were released, which was straight-up DNC Oppo work, I might add. If we lose the ground that we've won so bitterly, the nation is so fiercely emotionally invested, I fear that it will crack our republic wide open. That the fissure has become so wide that we can no longer bridge it. Just today, I was reading a story. I think it came over the email from the Blaze and from Glenn Beck. I can post it in my comments. That there is a bumper sticker that's been going around that you got to be really careful about. Because if the right person rolls up to you at a red light, you might just get your kicked. We've gotten there, where somebody being quote-unquote triggered is now being used as a reasonable justification? By police, okay? Well, maybe you provoked them. How? By wearing that MAGA hat. What? We must be so cautious. We have to extend our hand to our fellow Americans on the basis of them being fellow Americans, but we cannot yield the political force in this country. We cannot yield the ground that we've won, politically speaking. We need to meet on a cultural basis, on a one-to-one basis as human beings, and we need to accept each other's opinions for what they are, opinions. And they may be deeply held, cherished beliefs, but they're beliefs. Words are not violence. Words are not violence. People can have differences of opinion and coexist with one another. This is what we seem to have forgotten. This is what we seem to have lost. When people are threatening to car bomb each other, firebomb each other, or throw Molotov cocktails, when people are getting doxxed left, right, and center, because they believe differently. Whatever happened to, I disagree with you. And I disagree with everything you say. But I will fight to the death for your right to say it. We need to return to being those Americans. To being those people who can strenuously argue and debate a point for hours on end until our throats are sore and we're bleary-eyed from reading the notes. And then leave the debate hall clap an arm around a shoulder and say, "You did good. I disagree with you, but you did good. Let's go get a beer." We need to get back to being the nation of our grandparents, where your friends were your friends, whether you agreed with them politically or not. And coming from a guy whose premise of his show is dependent on social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, this sounds kind of hollow. But I think social media is partly to blame. But at the end of the day, social media is a mirror. It shows us ourselves. And if your heart is closed to someone because they're pro-choice or pro-life, because they believe there are only two genders, or they believe in the gender spectrum, because they believe in cradle-to-grave government care, or they believe in individual responsibility, if you are closing people out of your life for this reason, and I do it, my friends and family do it too, but we must acknowledge that we are a part of the problem, and we must strive to be better. Hold your convictions. Stand your ground. Yield nothing. Urge and support your legislators who are doing good to hold their ground. If they're not, vote in people who will do better. But hold the ground we've made so far. But do it without alienating people. Do it without creating hatred and strife. If we can remember how to do that again, then the Republic may still be saved. In the Facebook chat, I saw an old friend of mine, Jonathan Dunn, Freedom's Disciple on theblaze.com. If you want to check him out, blaze.com/radio, Freedom's Disciple. He popped in, and he always ends his show, or at least he did. America is great because Americans are good. We need to remember how to get back to good. Think and pray on that this week. I know I will. Thank you for listening to the HoloNet podcast for August 5th, 2018. Good night. God bless you. And from Phoenix, Arizona, God bless America.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.